The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. My name is Kyle Richardson. I'm with the First Responder Network Authority, federal agency in partnership with AT&T to deploy the FirstNet network. And today we're going to talk about what counties need to know about FirstNet. In other words, we're going to try to make this presentation relevant for you as governmental officials, and we have some public safety personnel, first responders on the line as well. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to the AT&T team to provide a quick introduction on themselves.
Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, we appreciate the partnership on this and looking forward to giving you some more info about FirstNet. I'm sure we've got probably a wide audience of those that are very knowledgeable of FirstNet, and maybe others that it's still a relatively new term for them. So looking forward to spending this next hour with you here. And I think the purpose of this, like Kyle mentioned, was to build in enough time for as much Q&A we have at the end too. So we'll speed through this deck and leave some time for some dialogue if we can. So I'm Danny Noble. I'm the FirstNet Territory Manager on AT&T side. So I cover what we call the Northern Plains region. So Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, and both Dakotas. And I've got a team of 9 people that really are responsible for anything and everything on AT&T's end, with consultations and coverage and meetings like this to just help get the message out for folks like yourselves when it comes to FirstNet. David?
Thank you, Danny. My name is David Barnett. I am the FirstNet Solution Consultant for the state of Iowa. Might have met many of you that might be on this call. My job is to meet with the agencies around the state of Iowa to discuss FirstNet so that you understand the purpose of the network, what it's meant to do, and how it can benefit your department as to help with your wireless connections. Kyle, turn it over to you, sir.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So yeah, like I said, my name is Kyle Richardson, and I work for the First Responder Network Authority, also known as FirstNet Authority for short. My background was serving in the National Guard for about 7 years, where we collaborated with emergency managers. I did a lot of modular airborne firefighting system work out in the western region in particular, and then with the hurricanes, obviously down in the southeastern region. This is our agenda for today. So I'll quickly go through history, partnership, and strategy. We'll hit on some of the roadmap as investments, kind of what's to come. We'll also get into, I'll pass it back to AT&T to get into the network, highlight some of the developments, technology, some of the success stories. We'll highlight just a few use cases. We'd love to hear from you as well in the chat. And then we'll pass it back to AT&T to highlight the specific solution that's available to public safety today. Just to take you kind of through this journey, where we came from, kind of where we're at today. Most importantly was the communication challenges that first responders had during 9/11. And that is foundational to our mission. Was in the 9/11 Commission report in 2004, where there was a national effort for radio spectrum to be dedicated to public safety purposes. That kind of initiated public safety uniting around this idea of a nationwide network. Obviously in 2001, broadband wasn't as ubiquitous as it is today. Needless to say, the need for interoperability has always been there. I like to say the word operability. But you look at events like 9/11, 2004 with Hurricane Katrina, and there was a lot of attempts through public safety associations at the national level, and obviously at the state level as well, to really lobby Congress for this dedicated spectrum. And finally, in 2012, FirstNet Authority was established, and this is the agency that I work for. We're an independent authority. We are actually under the Department of Commerce, the U.S. Department of Commerce, as a federal agency. In 2012 through 16, that kind of began the process of our outreach and consultation. I like to say in Iowa, we did the full Grassley, if you get that term. We went across the state, and kudos to folks like Tom Lampy and the ISIX board for involving all of the counties, all 99 counties, in the outreach and consultation process to get the feedback that really drove the state plan and the network, which is being delivered currently in the state of Iowa now. In 2017, March, we partnered with AT&T. And what was exciting about that partnership after a lengthy RFP process was that AT&T provided public safety priority and preemption day one on all their commercial bands. So in addition to beginning the FirstNet build out, which began right after the state of Iowa opted into the state plan, AT&T also provided priority and preemption on those commercial bands. Then in 2018-19, so just a couple years ago, we're in year 3 now of the build out, the network deployment began. And really foundational to that, or quite important to that, and differentiated in that, and what FirstNet provides is the core. The core is a separate, physically separate core for public safety use, and it's the 5th network. FirstNet is the fifth network, which is a public safety dedicated network, and we should all be happy and proud about that. And that's what you may hear referred to as Band 14, and that Band 14 build out has continued nationwide, and certainly AT&T has done a tremendous job in the build out in the state of Iowa. So where we go from here, 2020 and beyond, the FirstNet Authority certainly has a role to manage the contract with AT&T, but we also have key deliverables as it relates to the roadmap and reinvestment, which were 2 things that were specifically stated in the law. So where do you come in with this? You have a voice in this process. Certainly being informed about the build out in your county, who's using it, how is it in your emergency communications plans, and how is it working for them, capturing that feedback and then providing it back to me at the authority, and then also to our partners at AT&T. 2 key things I want to point out as it relates to the governance of FirstNet. The Public Safety Advisory Committee is a 43 member of associations organization that provides direct input to us. So they meet regularly and meet on specific topics such as push-to-talk functionalities, the ICAM, like the security of the network. There's very specific features that the network either provides or will provide that they continuously meet on. And the National Association of Counties is a member of that. The City and County Managers Association is also part of that from kind of the governance policy related point of view, but also the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Fire Chiefs, etc. All right, so I want to hone in a bit on, you see our logo is the FirstNet Authority. The 2 logos that you see on the screen, obviously the FirstNet built with AT&T, so there really is a difference, obviously. But if you hear what is FirstNet, that may be your first question. Well, are we talking about the AT&T or are we talking about the federal partner? So what we do, as I said before, is provide the oversight and support. We also advocate for public safety. So a lot of the folks that work on my team, and I work in the field for the state of Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, and Nebraska, so FEMA Region 7, in addition to the state of Ohio, to capture public safety's needs, those that are using the network, maybe some hindrances that are preventing them from getting the network, maybe coverage is not in their area, et cetera. So, and additional features that they may need. So I capture those needs, provide them back up through our organization, which kind of develops and fulfills our roadmap, and then we share that with AT&T. We also provide technical expertise through our lab in Boulder, Colorado. So in partnership with AT&T, we review all applications that go into the FirstNet app catalog. You'll see later in the presentation, there's over 100+ applications, as well as part of the device process at our lab in Boulder, Colorado. In fact, we took the ISIX board earlier this year, obviously before COVID, to the Boulder lab, and they were able to tour that lab, see kind of the behind the veil of the network working, and some of the advanced functionalities, demo some applications, etc. So our partner AT&T is responsible for the nationwide core, so maintaining that core, in addition to the RAN, the radio access network build out in all states and territories, tribal lands. Adoption and customer care, that's 24/7 by 365. And I look at that customer care as you have the 1-800 line, which we'll certainly share with you. But you also have folks like David, you have folks like Danny that are on this call that are able to help you at a moment's notice, whether you have a disaster happen, an emerging event happen, or a planned event that you need support for. They're also there. AT&T does security, provides the mission critical services, some that you're going to see rolling out quite soon, and then the application and device ecosystems as well. So this public-private partnership is really an unprecedented effort to deliver this for public safety in particular. It stays built with public safety input. That's foundational to our creation, is making sure that everything that we do is built with public safety input and considerate of the needs for public safety, not just today, but in the future. The public-private partnership is a very unique effort out of the federal government. Obviously, I've been with this agency for almost 7 years. Before there was an AT&T partnership of it, and we're really focused on meeting the strategic objectives based on public safety's feedback, as I mentioned. But what public safety subscribers get out of this partnership is that dedicated spectrum, being on that fifth network with a dedicated connection, that responsive ecosystem of applications, devices, and services, and then the nationwide mission with priority and preemption. And then we'll talk a bit about resiliency later. So how are we delivering, across the nation? Who's eligible to be a subscriber? Well, police, fire, EMS, 911, emergency managers. And then there's also what we call the extended primary group. So your utilities, your public works, snowplow drivers, et cetera, folks that also have the ability to get onto the network, and in certain instances be uplifted to also receive that same priority and preemption that your first responders do, because oftentimes those are the folks that are the first to a scene. Obviously, our deployment goes through counties, cities, tribal and rural areas. There's a rural mandate in the build out for FirstNet. So FirstNet builds out simultaneously in the rural areas as the urban areas across the country. And it's nationwide simultaneous build. So you're seeing the build out in Iowa, Nebraska, very substantial, as well as other areas of the country that folks on the border may interoperate with as well. This is a 25-year partnership, so you're going to see network improvement and upgrades over those 25 years. That's one of the reasons why I continue to drive into this presentation, that the collaboration is so key and so important for us. So Iowa was the 5th state to opt in. That was back in a little bit over 3 years ago, on July 18th. And kind of I just want to reiterate kind of the 6 objectives that were stated back in the opt-in. So supporting those day-to-day operations and large events like RAGBRAI, being all across the state. Certainly if next year there is a RAGBRAI, looking at the unique communications needs for an event like that. I look forward to partnering with public safety and AT&T for such a complex event like that. Working during natural disasters. Back to the events, we also support like the state fair, for example. There was the Field of Dreams game that we were prepared to support, and things like that. We can support everything from a county fair to a large, for example, the presidential debates and things like that are going on. So enhancing the network coverage in rural areas, as I mentioned, that rural mandate, drive infrastructure investments and jobs across the state, an ever-evolving set of life-saving tools for public safety. So you're going to continuously see the tool set for public safety come out with new features, and then future integration with next generation 911 and smart cities infrastructure. Iowa is very collaborative. We have multiple meetings with the ISIX board, whether it's the FirstNet subcommittee or the full board, which obviously represents the 6 regions. And then I think, Dave, you went out even just last week on one of the regional meetings with public safety to highlight the specific build in that region of the state. I forget exactly where that was. And then before I pass it to AT&T, I want to just highlight our path to investment. And so my job as the advisor for the state of Iowa is to continue to engage with public safety industry and partners in the state, whether that's on a one-to-one, as some of those regional meetings, the board meetings, or just public safety having that direct contact. That has developed and will continue to develop our roadmap. And our domains include things like situational awareness, user experience, secure information exchange, voice communications, and the core. And our investment decisions adhere to the enabling legislation, which was in the Middle Class Tax and Relief Act in 2012. And it's guided by investment principles, and it aligns to our authority roadmap. So we're going to make sure that the money is soundly spent for public safety's needs. That's an $18 billion reinvestment capability. And this past year, we recently, our board, our 15-member board, I should reiterate that, we have a 15-member board that also manages the operations of FirstNet, meets on a quarterly basis to discuss, operational needs for public safety and guide the decision making for FirstNet. A lot of those folks are from the public safety community. A lot of those folks are from industry and governmental folks as well. In fact, Mayor Billy Hughes from down in Mississippi is one of our board members currently. In fact, there's a solicitation for board members going on right now. So recently lost Sheriff Rich Stanek up in Hennepin County, Minnesota, and we'll have another public safety representative join our board. The vice chair of the board is Chief Rich Carrizo down in Southern Platte Fire Department up in the Kansas City area. So anyway, the board this past year voted to do 2 things with our reinvestment dollars. So $80 million to go towards 2 things. One, to expand the fleet of deployables, which you're going to hear about here in a second, and then to enhance the FirstNet core for 5G network capabilities. So looking to public safety to being really at the forefront of with these generation upgrades for cellular networks, the FirstNet core, the public safety core, to be prepared for 5G. So now I'm going to pass it over to Danny and Dave, and they're going to highlight what's available to you with the network.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate that. I think our first slide here just illustrates again kind of what Kyle talked about during the opt-in process, right? So the mission was to go around to all of these different states, DC and all the territories, and really give the option of opting in or opting out. If you opt in, obviously that means that you fully support FirstNet mission. If you opt out, really it's who else can help build this network and do it from scratch outside of what AT&T is doing. So as we all know now, we had all 50 states, 5 territories, District of Columbia, all of them opted in, and we could say we really do have the only nationwide public safety broadband network. And worth mentioning too that while we continue to build out in some of these areas and some of these rural areas, we do have adoption across the entire nation. Lots of users, which I think we show on one of the coming slides here too. So really proud of the public partnership that we have, public-private partnership with the FirstNet Authority, and again, creating the only nationwide public safety broadband network. Go ahead, Kyle. All right, so where are we today, right? This is kind of a good graphic of what we've done nationally. You can see here on the left, so 72 dedicated deployable assets. I think we're at 75 or 76 now, but so think of these as a mobile cell phone tower, right? Could be a cell on wheels. It could be a cell on wings, a cell on light truck. So essentially there's 2 ways that these work, right? There's planned events, and Kyle mentioned a few. It could be a presidential debate. It could be a concert. It could be a sporting event. where you call these in ahead of time because you're expecting some constraint on the network, and you call them, you request it, whatever the use case may be. And then also we have these during emergencies, right? It could be during the wildfires in California. It could be during a hurricane. It could be during derecho in Iowa, where there's a dedicated number to call, FirstNet Care, where you just call the 1-800 number, you say the word deployable, and we have a response operations group set up internally. It really helps triage that entire process for you. So we'll evaluate what the request is, what's needed, and if a deployable is the best route of action to solve it, we will send a deployable. In a lot of cases, it could be some adjustments with the network. It could be running a generator out. So this team that we have dedicated just to, again, our response operations group really helps identify in every single unique instance what the best case scenario is to help communications be resolved or increased where needed. So very big differentiator there. Actually, I think it's on here too, but the aerostat, so we just deployed, it's called FirstNet 1, and it's essentially just a massive blimp that we have that can be used for longer term events, again, to help with connectivity where there is none. So that's what the deployable program looks like. We've got about 80% of our Band 14 coverage completed. Kyle mentioned the 25-year contract, and the main build plan is those first initial 5 years. So we're well on pace and ahead of schedule there when it comes to building the actual network out with our Band 14 completion. FirstNet app catalog we'll talk about later, but we've got 100 plus apps in the app catalog and 100 plus FirstNet ready devices. FirstNet ready simply means you have Band 14 that Kyle talked about before, which is that 20 megahertz of spectrum we have. And it takes a FirstNet SIM card, and that's really the best case scenario, the best way to optimize your experience on FirstNet is with the FirstNet ready device. Back to the deployables, we did 450 plus of those last year. So these could be a mixture of, again, those planned events or emergencies, but very, very utilized program we have via those deployables. And then just overall, where we've come in the last couple of years. So 1.5 million connections on FirstNet nationally, and then over 13,000 public safety agencies are using FirstNet. And those numbers, of course, grow every day, not just nationally, but here in the state of Iowa as well. Go ahead. All right, so this is a list of the unique benefits of FirstNet. And again, it's how we kind of see ourselves as the fifth carrier. Even though it's that public-private relationship with AT&T and the FirstNet Authority, there are a lot of very unique differentiators. I won't run through all of these now, but like we mentioned before, Band 14, that 20 megahertz of spectrum, we kind of see this as like the beachfront property of spectrum, right? It's new, it's clean, it's very good indoors, it's much further propensity. So that Band 14 is one of our biggest differentiators. The contract, so 25-year contract, we're the only provider, the only company that has that, right? So we're contractually obligated to do all these things that are listed below with the FirstNet Authority. And, we face significant penalties and fines if we don't do those. So just know that we have that 25-year contract, that we're not just saying all these things we're going to do, but we're committed and contractually obligated to do so. We talked about priority and preemption. Those are the next two slides, so I'll skip over those. Local control, the uplift tool, that's in a future slide, but it's the ability really to give users additional level of priority where needed. Always expanding the network coverage. We mentioned the end-to-end network encryption of the network. Let's see here, gap catalog. Yeah, we'll go to the next slide, Kyle. We hit most of these here in the coming slides. All right, so priority, and I'm going to go back to one of the things that was mentioned earlier too, is who is really eligible for FirstNet. And we talked about priority and extended priority, primary. So primary users would be police, fire, EMS, some other government entities. Think of your hospitals, your ERs, your trauma centers. So the folks that when you call 911 would be immediately impacted or dispatched or called. Those are our primary customers. Within primary, there's also the ability, what we call subscriber paid. So subscriber paid simply means, let's just use, I'm in Des Moines right now, so we'll use City of Des Moines, right? So City of Des Moines would have their fire department. They would have their, an EMS team. They have their police department. So what the agency provides for them, whether it could be a smartphone or a tablet or in-vehicle solutions, but the subscriber paid side would also be if somebody is eligible in any of those categories, they could also go sign up for FirstNet in their own name, their own liability financially, and can be on FirstNet. So this is not just a an option for communications with the agency, but also the individuals that may not have a phone or a smartwatch or a tablet provided by their agencies, right? And then we have extended primary, which would be, think of these as the folks that are not police, fire, EMS, but may be part of their emergency operations plan, or maybe part of a safety plan. Think of maybe, a school, for instance, right? So if something happens at a school, who's called upon? Think of people in transportation. Think of people in the utility space. So there's a lot of different people we thought of, and we continue to develop what those use cases look like on who's really eligible for FirstNet. So I mentioned that here just because that kind of helps illustrate how priority and preemption work. So priority is 24/7, 365. There's no button to press or switch to turn on. It's always there when you need it. You don't have to call in and request it to be turned on. It's always there. So think of a highway and think of you having an HOV lane, right? You got the VIP card where your data sessions, your voice calls over LTE are always prioritized when you're on FirstNet as a primary user above anybody else other than 911 calls. So that's a huge differentiator that we have that can make sure that when people need to use their phones during an emergency that are on FirstNet as a primary user, it is there. Again, 24/7, 365. So the next screen here talks about preemption. So what happens if there are so many people on that highway, right? And having your HOV lane may not be enough because there are so many different commercial users and other FirstNet users, public safety users. Preemption ensures that if there were to be a large scale event, a large disaster, preemption will essentially relocate the non-public safety users off of the network or onto a different band of network, right? So we keep that band 14 spectrum, and we keep our other spectrums to make sure that, again, if there is an event, the folks that need to communicate can communicate. And that, again, this preemption piece is a huge differentiator from any other commercial carrier that's out there. Go ahead, Kyle. So building the network, again, Kyle mentioned the years of consultation and the RFP process that went out. I think one of the key things that AT&T had to offer was, we didn't think of just building a brand new network from scratch, which we all know would take years and years and years to complete that, right? So we offered from day one is let's use the infrastructure that AT&T already has. And you can see here on the slide, it's 2.61 million square miles at the time. And let's build in a way to provide that priority preemption on our LTE bands that we have today, right? And then in addition to that, let's go around and we'll add that band 14 that Kyle talked about. That's dedicated to public safety. Let's go and add that to our existing towers. So using our existing LTE infrastructure, let's go add band 14 to that existing infrastructure. And then let's go build new band 14 sites as well. So you're seeing all three of these pieces here happen. So that's, again, one of the unique things that each of these states that opted in had committed to whatever number of brand new, what we call FirstNet sites, in addition to whatever AT&T has done, in the interim on their own plans. So just know that you have the entire AT&T network, in addition to the sites we're building just for FirstNet, and then adding band 14 all along the way too. So I think here in Iowa, we can all attest that several years ago, the network in Iowa on AT&T's infrastructure maybe wasn't so great across the entire state. And FirstNet has helped change that drastically over the last, 6, 12, and maybe 18 months. Go ahead. All right, we talked about this deployable fleet, but I will just kind of double click here on the cost. So we always have public safety agencies ask us that, right? So if something happens and we have these flying cows and this FirstNet blimp, and we have these different Cellum light trucks, how do we get these and what's the cost, right? So part of this whole mission was that we're not going to charge you to be able to bring you the communication when you need it. So you can see here that the agencies can request this at absolutely no cost to them, whether it's an event that's planned or whether it's a disaster, any expense that's with it, the generators, the fuel, the deployment itself, the crew, we will not charge agencies at all for deploying our fleet of assets. Next slide. All right, we skipped over this in the previous slide, but so FirstNet Central, this used to be called local control, but this was one of the big asks from public safety too, is we want a way to be able to go in and manage our users uniquely, set up any kind of user roles and administrators and uplift managers, however we possibly can. So we built this portal and the FirstNet Assist app to really allow each agency to do just that, right? So you can go online on this website, you can shop for whatever kinds of phones, tablets, you name it, they're all available on here. Set up reports for billing. You could shop applications. You could set up that list of subscriber paid users that I mentioned. If you want to verify who in your department is eligible for FirstNet, you could essentially authorize them via this portal. And then a couple really big things on here too is the network status map. So I've been on AT&T now for almost 15 years, and I've never seen a public-facing view of what our network looks like, how our sites are operating, a general idea of where our sites are, flood maps and fire maps and wind. All of those things are available for those that have approval and are designated from their agency for the network status map. So you can see in real time how the network is operating to, again, be able to best assist you with communications. Then the uplift request tool, we talked before about those primary agencies and extended primary agencies. So extended primary agencies don't get that same priority and preemption 24/7 automatically. What the uplift request tool does is it allows you to essentially create your uplift group, and you can go on there if there is an event or a planned event, and you can uplift the users that you need to for a certain number of hours or a certain number of days. So I think back just to, I live in Minnesota, so the Minnesota State Fair last year, we had probably a dozen or more agencies that were helping out in a very, very crowded area, small area for the Minnesota State Fair. So those agencies went in and uplifted their users to make sure that, again, they have a higher level of priority than the general audience would, or even the other folks that are using FirstNet. So that uplift tool there is one of the most unique things that we have available, in my opinion, on FirstNet. Go ahead. All right, service plans. I think everybody's first two questions they always ask is, what does coverage look like and what is the cost, right? So we have very competitive plans, and I think part of this mission, again, is that we don't want people to have to go back and ask for money for budgets and have to go back and incur, very expensive costs to move to FirstNet. The whole idea was to be very affordable for anybody using FirstNet, whether it's those agencies or whether it's the subscriber paid users. We have lots of plans available. We're on pretty much every contract option. Most of you are probably familiar via your agencies, government agencies buying with NASPO, WISCO is another term for it, MPP Gov, we're on the GSA Schedule 70, custom government contracts. So essentially here, there's ways for almost anybody who's eligible for FirstNet to continue using similar contract options from how you have today. And you can see here too, as far as the flexible plans, so we have unlimited, we have smartphone plans, we have basic phone plans, machine-to-machine plans if you're using them for, maybe an IoT solution for very low data. And worth mentioning too that we do not throttle any user on FirstNet. So whether you're an agency-paid subscriber, whether you're subscriber paid in your own name, on an unlimited plan, on a smaller plan, we do not have the ability to throttle any user on FirstNet ever. Again, I think a big differentiator from a lot of the commercial carriers. Next slide. All right, and then customer care, I mentioned this before, but it's one phone number. You don't have to call and wait in a generic, an AT&T number you call and have to route it to customer care. You call the FirstNet customer care number. They're open 24/7, 365 for tech support. One phone number. You could chat, you can email. It's US-based public safety reps, and these folks are have been in public safety or understand public safety and can really help you every step of the way with whatever you may need. Next slide. All right, I think we're back to you for the next section here, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks very much, Danny. So this slide really represents the use cases across the country. Frankly, I used to be on the communications team, and I took a few of these photos of public safety actually using the network. And that's one of the things that I like to do as the advisor, especially for this region, is get down on the ground with public safety. what you may call boots on the ground, to see how they're using the network, see how the actual experience is for them. Not to just arbitrarily look at some application that says upload download speeds, but actually get in there and use the types of data that they're using, whether they're streaming video back to an EOC, using applications to track the location of responders in the field, to be able to do telemedicine and telehealth, to be able to do push to talk and those kind of things. The picture in the bottom, actually, middle, is in the EOC in Kansas City for the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade last year. And we had FirstNet Authority and FirstNet AT&T were the only carrier in the EOC at the time. And the importance of that is we were able to answer folks' questions. We were there during the event for any needs that they had. FirstNet was used in that EOC through their multiple video screens, for folks that were out there using push to talk out in the field to augment their land mobile radio systems. They were also, we were able to troubleshoot a couple things and make key contacts with folks within the Kansas City metro area emergency management. And then I went out into the field and was actually testing the network, doing some push to talk tests and things like that. Because I don't just take the marketing material and drink the Kool-Aid. I actually want to test it out, make sure that it works. And from my experience, we've had some pretty good experiences across the nation, but want to continue to hear more and more from you in public safety. These are some of the things I alluded to earlier: asset tracking, location services. The push to talk feature, AT&T currently offers an enhanced push to talk offering where you can quickly set up talk groups on the fly. Soon to come is mission critical push to talk, which is based on the 3GPP standards, the international standards body. And we sit as a voice for public safety on that FirstNet Authority to make sure that your needs are considered into the international standards. So this mission critical push to talk, which will come soon, has much lower latency, is an excellent product that will be coming out for public safety, currently in beta test. The priority and preemption that we mentioned is very key. And to that end, I want to emphasize that don't get rid of WPS. So, for example, and this is why the planning piece is very important. If you have an emergent event, or you have a planned event, it's important on your ICS forms to gather what network folks are using, and to consider that during a disaster, if networks go down, FirstNet's going to do what it can to keep the network operational, to restore the network as quick as possible to get it up and running. FirstNet can't guarantee any other carrier and what their experience is going to be like. So if you have somebody in an affected area, if you have responders in that area, using WPS assures that your call goes through to that other end. If it's FirstNet to FirstNet, we can control that, but any other carriers, that's important to keep that in mind. The critical real-time information sharing, doing advanced planning, that's a piece that we can partner with you on at the FirstNet Authority. That's one of the services that we provide, as well as doing things like providing injects for exercises and doing after-action reviews. So if you had an event where maybe it wasn't so successful and there was some nuances that you would like to work out, we're happy to sit down and meet with you. And then the LMR to LTE integration. There's a few ways to do that. There's radio over IP. There's also ISSI, some different connections that are available. I'm going to go over one, in fact, in a couple slides here. The rural build out is key, as I mentioned. Currently, FirstNet covers 50% of the rural population, which is approximately 25.6 million Americans. And you think about when you're deploying, and this quote to the right by Assistant Chief Rob Dennert with West Des Moines EMS kind of hits on it, is that when you're deploying to a certain area, whether it's for mutual aid or EMAC, these kind of deployments, FirstNet is going to deploy with you. We've seen it with the hurricanes down south in the last few weeks. We've seen it with the wildfires out west. Even in your interstate mutual aid events, FirstNet is going to deploy there, whether it's with one of their SAT Colts, one of their other unique options that they can provide, or just getting you cache devices and whatever it is that you need on that end as well. During the derecho storm, the city of Clinton, they lost their VHF tower. I'm sure many of you know, I don't know if anybody from Clinton's on here. And it provided coverage to their downtown area. Well, Iowa DPS, they deployed their mobile command vehicle, which provided on-street coverage for the ISIC stadium, the statewide radio system. Lieutenant Tom Lampy with Iowa DPS, what he's been working on is this project to take that technology and incorporate the same concept using FirstNet LTE in that mobile trailer you see in the picture on the left there. Today, and in fact this was last month, a trailer with the antenna in the air and using FirstNet is connected to the core, providing the city of Clinton with all the coverage they need in downtown until they get their system back up. Now, so you see the ability of the two systems, ISIX and FirstNet, to complement each other, in many ways augment each other, but to be those two systems that have the redundancy when they need them, and to be there kind of for each other throughout the state. And it's actually very unique that the state of Iowa building two systems simultaneously. For COVID-19, we've seen an influx of data being shared. In fact, the next slide will give a couple statistics. So this quote from Dave Egger was a generic quote at the time, earlier this year, but just focuses on how it puts emergency medical services in the express lane for sharing important data with regional hospitals. Obviously, the data that emergency medical service shares is tremendous amount of data, and getting it to the right place as quick as it can is going to help that patient experience. So here's some of the statistics during the 2020 pandemic, going back to May of this year. FirstNet has been used by medical facilities, drive-through testing sites, as well as quarantine centers and emergency operations centers. 50 plus FirstNet mobile cell sites have been deployed for COVID-19 related emergencies, and you might have seen out in the East Coast with the naval ship that was equipped with FirstNet for quarantine at the outset of this. And then this is interesting, 2 times as much data has been consumed by first responders as opposed to normal operating times during this COVID pandemic. I'm going to pass it back over to David to cover kind of the ins and outs of getting your hands on the FirstNet solution. Dave?
Thank you, Kyle. So one of the great things about FirstNet is anything you have that is a wireless connected device. Kyle, you took the slides away, sir. All we can see is camera. So anything that you use connected to a network, such as a smartphone, tablets, rugged phones, your in-vehicle routers, your MDTs, your rugged laptops, modems, hotspots, smartwatches, camera, body cams, can all be connected to the FirstNet network, having that priority and preemption at all times. So that's one of the beauties, again, of FirstNet, is any wireless connected device you can use on the FirstNet network with the priority and preemption. Next slide, please, Kyle. So FirstNet.com, you can always go and check what devices are able to be purchased and used on the FirstNet network. And then, like Danny had mentioned earlier, to get the true benefit of FirstNet, we want to use a Band 14 certified device. And when you go to FirstNet.com, it will show you a list of devices, phones, tablets, and laptops that can be used on the FirstNet network. If you ever have a question about maybe you have an existing laptop or tablets that your agency is already using and you would like to use those on the FirstNet network, you can always reach out to myself. I'll make sure that we provide contact information, and I can check those devices and see if they are certified devices that can be used on the FirstNet network, so that you don't have to purchase new equipment, possibly if you don't have that money in the budget. So a lot of times we can use those existing devices that you already have. Next slide, Kyle. So we also have the FirstNet app catalog that has over 100 apps. This is an effort with the FirstNet Authority and AT&T for these apps to be verified and checked before they're even put into the catalog for public safety to use. So that's one of the great things about the app catalog is the apps have been checked and cleared to be able to use for public safety by the authority and by AT&T. The other thing that we have is called the App Developer Program, where you, as a user, can help develop apps for the FirstNet app catalog. So it's not just the FirstNet Authority or AT&T people that are creating these apps. You, as a user, can also be involved in that process. So that's one of the other great things about FirstNet is if there's something that you think would be really great for public safety, you can bring that idea and work and help develop that program for other people in public safety to be able to use. Next slide, Kyle.
I think we're up for Q&A. Kyle, if it's okay, just a couple things that I'll say kind of here in closing, I guess, before the Q&A starts is, I mentioned before, I think that the primary two things that everybody really looks at before they evaluate FirstNet is coverage and price, right? And when we talk about price, there's always very lucrative promotions that we have. Again, recognizing that a lot of these agencies don't have thousands or tens of thousands to buy new equipment, right? And a couple examples would be right now on primary users and extended primary users right now for agency paid, we have what's called the free smartphone for life. So there's a list of about 10 to 15 devices, it's always changing, where we essentially will give these to agencies at no cost, right? So whatever contract you're using, whether it's a local smaller contract or a NASPO contract or the state contract, but there's a list of, again, smartphones between Apple and Android that you can get for nothing, right? Free smartphone for life. On the subscriber paid side, if you do not get a device from your agency and you have to sign up individually, there's two huge promotions now too, one of which would be the new Apple Watch that just came out. You're eligible actually for a new Apple Watch at no cost. You sign up for FirstNet in your own name and you can get an Apple Watch. We're also doing things like the iPhone 11 where you can get it for $350 off. So the cost piece of it, again, we can evaluate with each and every one of you kind of what questions and what devices you're using, but the cost piece, I think, between our monthly rates and the promotions we run, it's always very, very competitive. And then the network piece, I mentioned this before, we've come a very, very long way in Iowa. I moved up here to this area in March of last year, and I think David will attest to this, and most of you know this, that there's a lot of areas that AT&T didn't have great coverage, right? If you were on a major highway, you had great coverage, but outside of that, there was a lot of work to do. And Iowa, as you know, it's a lot of rural areas. So again, this FirstNet mission has really completely changed what our network looks like in Iowa and in those rural areas and in your county, in your city. And what I would say is, people like David are there really to help you test that. If you're still a little skeptical, if you're not really sure what AT&T's done in your area, reach out to us. We're more than happy to share what your area looks like. We're more than happy to share with you, types of devices for you to try, test it out, give it a demo, see if it works. I don't think anybody is ubiquitous for coverage, but we surely would not want someone to switch to FirstNet when they don't have adequate communication, right? So I guess I'll just say that in closing on our end, Kyle, is just use David and I and my team for whatever you possibly need, whether it's questions about price, questions about coverage, anything you mentioned today, that's what we're here for. This is a network that's really built for you guys. So we're here to help anyway.
Thanks, Danny. We've got a question that just came in here to the chat box. Can you tell me when AT&T will be building the towers in Page County, Iowa? I have assigned 911 addresses to them, and I'm anxious to get an AT&T phone.
I can try to take that one. I don't know that off the top of my head, so I think a lot of these network-related questions, if you don't have David and I's info, we'll make sure you get it. We can send it out. But reach out to us, and we'll try to figure out if we have any sort of time frame, or again, we could sit down with you and show you what it looks like in your area. So we'll take that one as probably a one-off. Just I don't have the information on every specific site, ready today for that, but more than happy to help.
The other thing is you have the build out. Some of the build out maps are available on AT&T.com with the overlay, and you can see, I guess, different layers of whether it's in building and that sort of thing. Is that right?
Yep, you are right. Yeah, AT&T.com, it actually does a pretty good job of showing kind of different levels of usage, whether it's, a band 14 area or a different area. It's pretty good. But again, David and I can sit down with you, each individual, whether it's agency or city or county, and go into some more details with you as well.
One of the things with the Advanced Network Status tool, which is, as Danny mentioned, very unique to the carriers, is it'll provide the towers right down to the street level. So you can really see in your county, in your jurisdiction, what that tower footprint looks like. Obviously, LTE technology is a bit different from some of the previous technologies, land mobile radio, for example, where that signal propagates a little bit differently. But being able to see down to that tower level can really help you to make some decisions as it relates to deploying your personnel, as it relates to, for example, with the derecho. Storm came through. The quicker you can get on the phone with AT&T to get the deployable assets out to your area, we have a 14-hour response time objective. The quicker you can get on the phone for that, the quicker you can get it out to your jurisdiction to keep your communications up and running and restored. There's obviously these God events, they call them, that really are challenging for any type of network, certainly as you think of physical infrastructure. But AT&T is doing a great job of looking at redundancies and other ways to keep that network experience up and running for public safety. We have a few more minutes for any additional questions. If anybody wants to chime in on the audio portion, or we'll take them here in the chat.
We just had someone ask where they can obtain your contact information.
Yeah, absolutely. I should have probably put it on the last slide here. My contact information is kyle.richardson@firstnet.gov. And then I'll pass it over to Danny.
Yep, you can get a hold of me. So Danny Noble, my email address is D-Delta-N November 512 Romeo @att.com. DN512R@att.com.
And this is David Barnett. My email address is D as in David, B as in boy, 145, A as in Adam, @att.com. And I'll also provide you with my phone number, so if anybody wants to reach out, questions they'd like to ask, they're more than welcome to call or text me. That number is 931-218-8734.
I also want to mention, thanks guys, on firstnet.gov, if you go right to the main page, you have the big slider window that changes the pictures. Right under that, you can select your state. Select the state of Iowa. Obviously, you'll see my picture over there, my contact information, my phone number, etc. You'll see some use cases in Iowa, some upcoming events that we'll be speaking at, and those kind of things. So you can always go to there as well. And then as part of the follow-up from this webinar, we're going to be sending out, yay, another survey. We're going to send out this survey, which actually will actually have some good positive consequences as it relates to the network. It's about our roadmap. We're going to ask you some very specific questions around the areas of coverage and capacity, as I mentioned before, so that you can really help drive what the future of FirstNet looks like. And particularly want to hear about any challenges you have, any needs that you have looking forward in your jurisdictional area. Any other questions, Katie, JC?
I don't see any at this time, but I want to thank you guys so much for your time today. And if we do get any questions, I'll be sure to forward those your way.
Absolutely. Thank you. Like I said, there'll be a survey that's going to come from an email outreach at firstnet.gov, and that'll have a link to a survey as a follow-up from this presentation as your ability to really provide feedback to the FirstNet Authority roadmap. David, Danny, anything else?
No, I'll just echo the same thing. I appreciate your time today, and again, don't hesitate. Reach out to us for any questions you may have. We're here to help in any way. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you all.